And thank you so much for Black Alliance for Peace for having me, and all of those who are supporting behind the scenes with tech. Thank you for holding us down. I am nervous as hell. It's been just quite a week, as y'all have already, as y'all probably know. I wanted to share a poem with you all. It's a way for me to sort of get my nerves out, but also I just wanted to just share this with you all. I think it's important. And then after the poem, Kendall, we can go into the presentation. Thank you so much. So this poem is called For Kids Who Die by Langston Hughes. This is for kids who die. Black and white, for kids certainly will die. The old and rich will live on a while, as always, eating blood and gold, letting kids die. Kids will die in the swamps of the Mississippi, organizing sharecroppers. Kids will die in the streets of Chicago, organizing workers. Kids will die in the orange groves of California, telling others to get it together. Whites and Filipinos, Negroes and Mexicans, all kinds of kids will die who don't believe in lies and bribes and contentment and a lousy peace. Of course, the wise and learned who pen editorials in the papers, and the gentlemen with the doctor in front of their names, white and black, who make surveys and write books, who will live on weaving words to cover and smother the kids who die. And the sleazy courts and the bribe-reaching police and the blood-loving generals and the money-loving preachers will all raise their hands against the kids who die, beating them with laws and clubs and bayonets and bullets to frighten the people. For the kids who die are like iron on the blood of people, and the old and rich don't want the people to taste the iron of the kids who die. Don't want the people to get wise and to own their power and to believe like Angelo Herndon or to get it together. Listen, kids who die. Maybe now there will be no monument for you except in our hearts. Maybe your bodies will be lost in the swamps or in a prison grave or the potter's field or the rivers where you drowned. But one day, the day will come, you are sure yourselves that it is coming, when the marching of the feet of the masses will raise you for a living monument of love and joy and laughter, and the black hands and the white hands clasped as one, and a song that reaches the sky, the song of life triumphant through the kids who die. So Kendall, if we could just start the slides. Thank you so much. Again, my name is Ciara. I'm based here in Harlem. I've always been a lover of Langston Hughes, and more recently in my political work, learning about the incredible revolutionary role that he has played in the development of not only Black people, but people in struggle everywhere, the poor and dispossessed around the world. And I want to talk about and continue on this conversation that Rafiki so beautifully opened up of the role of culture and resistance and revolution. And can we go to the next slide, Kendall? So I wanted to share with you a little bit about myself. It's been really difficult to connect with people during the pandemic, and I've been fortunate to be able, through the work of organizing and in struggle, be able to stay in connection with people. But as y'all probably know, getting to know each other can be quite difficult. So I wanted you all to just know who I am and why my perspective is the way that it is. And if we find commonality, reasons why it should be. You know, I'm a product of the Baptist church. I'm a millennial. I'm one of the first people, one of the first, children who had computers in schools. Grew up on Reading Rainbow, saw, Julian Gonzalez, come up the shores of Miami. TLC holding us down with Don't Go Chasing Waterfalls, educating us about the role of AIDS and drugs and to use protection. Y2K, we thought the world was going to end. I feel like every 3 years the world is about to end. Rodney King, September 11th in the United States, the Dreamers Movement, Katrina. I went to Florida A&M University. Obama, Tupac and Biggie, the Columbine massacre, the first school shooting that I was conscious for, the signing of the NAFTA agreement, Occupy Wall Street, and of course the killing of Trayvon Martin. All of these things have shaped me and have shaped my worldview. And I want to acknowledge that I'm not here as an individual, but I am here as the result of my development and the people who I've had the opportunity to develop with. And if we go to the next slide. So when we're talking about culture, like our comrade Rafiki said, it's not just about what is beautiful, what is cool. Culture is a set of values and beliefs. And like I showed y'all in, the former slide, it was shaped by all these different, the culture, the media, religion. I grew up Baptist. I went to a Catholic church or Catholic school the first few years of my education. It's the politics, it's the war, education, media. All of these things shape the way that we understand society. And the next slide, please. And so, like our comrade said before, culture is a reflection of the economic base. It's not just I was shaped by like watching TLC, but I was shaped also with the AIDS epidemic and the crisis therein, and seeing the way in which the government really don't give a fuck about us if they can't turn a profit on us, and that they will leave us to die as long as their profit margins keep going. If we can go to the next slide, please. And so, like Rafiki was saying, the ideas of the ruling class are the ruling ideas. So oftentimes when we think, oh, I think this way because, I'm an individual and, I was just born revolutionary. I came out the womb, I hit the streets, I was reading Asada at 3, all of that. But not really understanding the ways that we are shaped and how we are developed and what we're really up against here. And so I have a few examples of the ways in which the culture all around us, in ways that we can't even, sometimes we're not even conscious of it, really seeps into who we are and forms our beliefs or rather conforms our beliefs to the beliefs of those who oppress us. So the Americanization of the global South, so the taking over of national economies around the world and introducing our industry. This is imperialism. You see the jingle all the way, the corporate holidays, consumerism, Kylie Jenner, self-made, billionaire or whatever, this idea of the entrepreneur, the individual. I got here by myself. The one in the corner here is not really fair because this picture is beautiful, but the idea of the good wife, the wife who can, cook and clean and, teach the Bible and, it's all the, the perfect things that a good wife is supposed to be, have a baby. And the next day, you're like Ciara, the singer with the 6-pack. The idea of the good worker, what it means to be seen as hard working in this country, how the ruling class really shapes the way that we think about our role and our relationships in everyday life. Next slide, please. And so I wanted to talk with you all. Again, I am I don't want to say product, but I am a developing person who has been developed as a result of certain experiences. And so one of those experiences is that I was able to go to Brazil in 2014 with a delegation of folks who were, rising up in Florida around Trayvon Martin. We also have folks from Ohio, and we learned about this concept called Mystica. And Mystica is, the Portuguese word for it, but we talk about it here in the United States as the spirit of struggle, the spirit of revolutionary struggle. And can we go to the next slide? So where does Mystica come from? So obviously, the spirit of revolutionary struggle, it wasn't just born in Brazil. Actually, the word mystica the root word comes from mysterium, which is a word in Greek, which means to look at the whole of something, to look at the full development of something. And so mystica really arose as a practice in the 1960s liberation theology movements within Latin America, when it was illegal to engage in struggle. And so people were able to use the cultural traditions of religion and the organization therein, and the stories to really be able to educate people, to remind us of who we are as a people, as an oppressed people, and that we will not always be oppressed, that we can resist. We've seen Mystica, of course, our comrades in Haiti are rising up right now. We've seen Mystica throughout, the history of revolutionary struggle. Next slide, please. And so Mystica, it's the values and principles, lifting up what are the values and principles of our people, of the 99%. It's the symbols of our struggle. It's the motivation, what keeps us moving. It's our collective vision. Again, it's not about individualism. Organizing revolutionary or revolution is the art of the possible. And that art can only be done with compromise. Like, how can we come to a consistency? How can we build together? How do we create a collective vision that we are able to struggle together? Next slide, please. So why Mystica? Next slide. So again, the ruling ideas of the day are the ideas of the ruling class, and we may not even recognize the ways in which we've internalized those ideas. And so Mystica as a practice is being conscious of the way that we show up. What do we value? What do we believe in? What are the images of our people, of our history, the songs, the music? What do we care about? What are we striving for? Next slide. And so the idea is that the way that we do one thing is the way that we do everything. And so if we're to be a revolutionary, but you can't, clean the toilet in a collective space, then how am I supposed to trust you on the battlefield, to do what needs to be done when it needs to be done, if you're going to pick and choose what you feel as though it is beneath you, or what you feel that you contribute. It's a way of political education. In the time of the 1960s in Brazil, there was like 90% illiteracy among the peasants. And so how do you bring together people who don't know how to read, how to write? How do we educate each other? How do we tell our stories? How do we, build our collective memory? How do we, in the farm workers movement, you have Filipinos, you have Mexican folks, you have Black people, all speaking different languages. How are we able to come together and be able to build a movement with one another without the use of language? And so Mystica is something to be lived in our everyday life. It is a practice. And when we talk about the practice of Mystica, we're talking about internalizing the revolutionary struggle. We've heard this in many ways. Huey P. Newton says, revolutionary suicide. People have different interpretations of that. I like to think of it as, dying, the killing of the capitalists within us, that kind of revolutionary suicide. Che Guevara talks about it as the new man. We have to think about how do we actually bring ourselves to our revolutionary potential in the now, so that we are able to break out of the capitalist realism that tells us that things have always been this way, things will forever be this way. We don't deserve to live. We don't deserve food. We don't deserve water. We don't deserve housing. This is a way for our people to remind ourselves of the leadership that the most impacted, the most oppressed, the poor and dispossessed internationally, that we have throughout history been able to win, and we will be able to win once more. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. Thank you all so much for having me. Good evening. Good night.